Welcome to the U.S. English Lab. Let's master your English together.
So picture this. You are staring at a Zoom screen. 50 people are, silently waiting for you to finish your sentence.
Oh gosh. Yeah, the absolute worst nightmare.
Right. And you know exactly what you want to say. Like, the concept is crystal clear in your mind.
Yeah.
But as you reach into your mental toolbox for that one perfect, specific English word, it has completely evaporated.
Just gone.
Leaving you staring blankly, making these vague hand gestures, and feeling this incredibly specific type of panic.
It is a profoundly isolating moment. I mean, the harder you search for the word, the further away it seems to slip until you're just left stringing together these awkward fillers while your internal monologue just screams.
Today, our mission in this deep dive is to figure out why your own neurochemistry betrays you in these exact moments. And, more importantly, how to stop it. We're unpacking the cognitive psychology, the neurolinguistics, and the communication strategies of the dreaded mid-sentence blank. Okay, let's unpack this. Why does my brain abandon me when I need it most?
First, I think we need to completely remove the guilt. What you're experiencing isn't a failure of intelligence or a lack of vocabulary.
That is very good to hear.
Yeah, it's actually a documented neurological glitch in human hardware, and it's known as lethologica.
Lethologica.
The term comes from the Greek lethe, which means forgetfulness, and logos, meaning word. But in psycholinguistics, we generally just refer to it as the tip of the tongue state.
Lethologica. It kind of sounds like a tropical disease, but it's really just me forgetting the word like spreadsheet during a quarterly review.
Exactly.
And I have to ask, since so much of our audience is learning English or speaking it as a second language, is this specific to certain languages? Or is this a universal human glitch?
Oh, it is woven into the very fabric of human biology. A massive survey of world languages found that over 75% of them use a literal tongue-based metaphor to describe this exact feeling.
Really? 75%?
Yeah. For instance, in Korean, speakers describe the missing word as sparkling at the end of my tongue.
Sparkling at the end of my tongue. That is a beautiful way to capture that agonizing feeling, like the word is right there flashing at you, but you just can't quite grasp it.
It's so poetic, right? And Estonians say the word is at the head of the tongue.
Wow.
But to prove this isn't just some cultural idiom that got passed around through, globalization, researchers actually traveled to the city of Coban in Guatemala.
Okay. Why there?
Well, they wanted to study speakers of an unwritten indigenous language.
Unwritten meaning they have no formal dictionaries, right? Like no standardized linguistic textbooks to dictate how they should talk about language.
Exactly. The participants in the study had absolutely no cultural phrase for tip of the tongue. It just wasn't a concept they discussed. Yet when researchers showed them pictures of local celebrities and asked them to recall their names, they observed the exact same intense frustration.
No way.
Yeah, the same physical tension and the exact same cognitive block. The researchers concluded that lethologica is a fundamental biological process. It is a mechanical failure in the brain's retrieval system. It's completely independent of culture or language.
Okay, so every human on Earth gets this glitch.
Pretty much.
But to fix a broken machine, we kind of need to know how the assembly line is supposed to run when it's working perfectly.
Right. And we can map that assembly line using Level's speech production model. It breaks human speech down into 3 distinct rapid-fire stages.
Okay, let's hear them.
So stage 1 is conceptualization. This is the abstract idea. You're deciding what you want to say, and it is entirely free of language.
So just the pure concept. I want to convey that the project deadline needs to be pushed back. There are no words yet, just the intention.
Yes, you're just forming the thought. Then stage 2 is formulation. This is where your brain takes that raw abstract concept and routes it through your vocabulary center. It assigns specific words and grammatical rules to fit the idea. Finally, stage 3 is articulation, where your brain sends electrical signals to your lungs, your vocal cords, and your mouth to physically push air out and make the sounds.
Concept, formulation, articulation. So if the assembly line is moving at lightning speed, where exactly is the bottleneck happening during lethologica?
It happens squarely in the middle. It's at the formulation stage, at a specific juncture that psycholinguists call a fluency vulnerability point.
Fluency vulnerability point.
Yeah. And to understand why it's so vulnerable, we have to look at how your mind physically files away words. Because every single word you know is stored in 2 completely separate parts.
Wait, 2 parts?
Yes. The lemma and the lexeme.
The lemma and the lexeme. Walk me through the difference.
So the lemma is the abstract meaning and the grammar. It contains the data that a word is a noun, and it knows exactly what the word means.
Okay.
The lexeme is the physical architecture of the word. So the phonetic sound, the syllables, the pronunciation.
Oh, I see where this is going. It's like having a contact saved in your smartphone. The lemma is the contact's name and their profile picture, right?
Right.
You know exactly who you want to call and why you want to talk to them. But the lexeme is the actual 10-digit phone number.
That is a perfect analogy.
And lethologica is like having a cracked screen right where the phone number is supposed to be. You are staring at the person's face, but you physically don't have the digits to dial.
Exactly. And to take that further, your brain doesn't just stop at the crack on the screen. Because you have successfully activated the lemma, the concept, your brain starts desperately throwing partial files at you. We call this generic recall.
Generic recall.
Yeah. Even when you are completely blocked from saying the word, your brain can access structural properties about it.
Which is why you sit there going, I know it starts with an S. It definitely has 3 syllables.
Yes.
You have the shape of the word, just not the word itself.
Precisely. Studies show that during a tip-of-the-tongue state, participants can correctly guess the first letter of the missing word 57% of the time.
Wow, 57%.
Yeah. They can tell you where the primary stress falls in the pronunciation. Your brain is trying to dial the number, it has the area code, but the full phonetic blueprint is just locked behind a broken connection.
So if this is a fundamental human glitch that happens to all of us in our native languages, why does it feel like it happens 10 times more often when you're speaking a second language?
It really does feel that way.
Right. For anyone listening who is learning English, these mid-sentence blanks feel like a constant hovering thread that just exhausts you by the end of the day.
That exhaustion is very real, and it comes from the unique architecture of the bilingual brain. There is a steep cognitive cost to speaking a second language, which is explained by the dual language activation account.
The bilingual tax.
Essentially, yes. When an English learner wants to say the word rose, their brain doesn't just quietly open the English file cabinet.
What does it do?
Because the brain is highly associative, it simultaneously activates the word in their native language. So say rosa in Spanish or gül in Turkish. Both words are pulled up into working memory at the exact same millisecond.
So both languages are basically competing for the vocal cords.
Yes. And to successfully speak in the second language, the brain has to actively push down or suppress the native language. We call this inhibitory control.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. Applying that massive reactive inhibition to the language you've used your entire life takes an incredible amount of computational energy. You are constantly holding back a floodgate.
So your brain is essentially multitasking on a massive scale. It's trying to retrieve the delicate English phonetic file while simultaneously wrestling its native language to the ground.
Which means your cognitive overhead is already pushed to the absolute limit. And that is why second language speakers are so incredibly vulnerable to foreign language anxiety, or FLA.
Okay.
Producing second language speech requires conscious attention. But when a speaker gets nervous in a meeting or a classroom, their limited working memory gets hijacked by intrusive, self-focused thoughts. Like, everyone is staring at me, I sound stupid, my accent is too heavy.
Wait, I need to push back here.
Oh.
Because I forget words all the time when I'm just sitting on the couch talking to my spouse in my native language.
Sure.
I have zero anxiety, absolutely no stage fright, and no one is judging me. So how can we just blame stress and anxiety for this?
That is a crucial distinction. What happens on the couch is standard lethologica. It's a simple misfire in the lemma to lexeme connection, usually due to fatigue or distraction.
Right.
But what happens to a second language learner in a high-stakes meeting is an entirely different biological mechanism. It is a physiological cascade driven by the HPA axis. That's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
Okay, so what exactly is the HPA axis doing to my language retrieval?
We have to look at this from an evolutionary perspective. When you experience communication-induced stress, like 50 people staring at you on Zoom, your brain perceives a threat.
Like a physical threat.
Yes. It activates the HPA axis, flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline. If you are being chased by a tiger on the savannah, your brain doesn't want you creatively searching for nuanced vocabulary words. It wants you running.
Right.
So the cortisol hyperactivates your amygdala, the fear and survival center of the brain.
It diverts the power away from the thinking brain to the survival brain.
Exactly. The amygdala chemically disconnects the flexible, creative neural pathways in your prefrontal cortex. It literally unplugs the semantic search engine you rely on to find complex words, forcing you into rigid, habitual survival responses.
Wow. So by panicking about forgetting the word, you are bathing your brain in a chemical that biologically deletes your ability to find the word.
It is a very cruel irony.
Yeah.
And it perfectly explains a phenomenon the French call l'esprit de l'escalier, or staircase huit.
Oh, I've heard of this. It's that infuriating moment where you remember the perfect word or the absolute best comeback to an argument 10 minutes after the meeting is over while you're walking down the stairs to leave the building.
Yes, exactly. Because during the stressful interaction, your high cortisol levels had successfully disconnected your prefrontal networks.
But then you leave.
Right. Once you left the room, the perceived threat vanished, the cortisol cleared out of your bloodstream, the amygdala powered down, and those flexible search pathways finally reconnected.
Oh, man.
Suddenly, the word just pops into your head effortlessly because the biological roadblock is gone.
That is deeply infuriating, but honestly, incredibly validating to know it's not a personal failure. It's just neurochemistry doing its job.
Exactly.
Okay, so picture the scenario. You're in the meeting. Your native language is fighting your second language. Your working memory is overloaded. Your cortisol is spiking, and you've completely lost the word. What is the absolute worst thing you can do in that exact moment?
The worst thing you can do is what almost all of us instinctively do. You stop talking, you freeze, and you intensely struggle to remember the word.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this completely contradicts everything traditional education has ever taught us.
It really does.
My teachers always told me, take your time, focus, try hard to remember it, it'll come to you. You're telling me that struggling and trying hard is biologically the wrong move.
I am, and the psycholinguistic research on this is revelatory. Corinne Humphreys, a researcher at McMaster University, conducted extensive studies on what actually happens in the brain when we struggle during a tip-of-the-tongue state.
Okay, what did she find?
Well, when you lose a word, your instinct is to sit there for 10, 20, 30 seconds, agonizing over it, trying to force the connection. But Humphreys found that this intense struggle acts as incorrect practice time.
Incorrect practice, like going to the driving range and hitting 100 golf balls with a terrible broken swing.
Yes.
You aren't getting better at golf. You are just getting better at swinging terribly.
That is the exact mechanism. The brain relies on synaptic plasticity and implicit learning. It alters the strength of neural connections based on how frequently and intensely we use them.
Right, neurons that fire together wire together.
Exactly. When you are stuck in a tip-of-the-tongue state, the pathway between the concept and the sound, the lemma and the lacame, is broken. If you sit in that broken state, staring at the ceiling for 30 seconds, your brain registers that intense, focused effort as practice. You are biologically wiring the error state into your memory.
So by trying really hard to remember the word, I am literally digging the pothole deeper. I am training my brain to forget that specific word again in the future.
Precisely. Humphreys demonstrated a robust error repetition effect. If you have a tip-of-the-tongue moment on a specific word today and you sit there struggling with it, you are highly likely to forget that exact same word again next week.
No way.
Yeah. She used the example of the word spelunking, the sport of exploring caves.
Oh, that's a tough one anyway.
Right. Participants who struggled to remember it, rather than just asking for the answer, were almost guaranteed to blank on the word spelunking again during subsequent tests. The brain learns the struggle, not the solution.
And while you're sitting there struggling, your brain isn't just passive. It starts actively throwing the wrong words at you to fill the void.
Right. The research calls these phonological interlopers. Because you are stuck in what researchers call a subthreshold state or a local minimum, your brain knows the word starts with an S, so it starts aggressively offering you spelunking adjacent words.
Like what?
Spelling, spilling, spellbound. And every time you consider one of those wrong words, you reinforce the incorrect pathway.
Okay, if struggling actively damages our memory retrieval, how do we get out of the loop? Like, how do we fix the broken pathway without reinforcing the error?
You have to utilize the resolution effect. The goal is to bypass the error learning loop quickly and cleanly. If you are studying or in a casual conversation, the absolute best way to do this is to immediately ask a friend for a brief phonological clue.
Just a clue, not the whole word.
Yeah, just ask for the first letter or the first syllable. If someone says spoo, and you immediately say spelunking, you have successfully completed the motor production loop.
Wait, I physically have to say the word out loud.
Yes, that is the most critical part of Humphrey's findings. Passive exposure does not work.
Really?
Yeah. If you struggle for a minute, give up, and just look the word up in a translation app on your phone, reading it silently doesn't repair the retrieval pathway. You have to actively produce the sound from your own mouth to map the lemma back to the lexeme.
That is a massive hack for anyone studying a language. If you forget a word, don't just look at the translation on your screen and nod. You have to look at it and then physically speak it aloud to pave over the pothole in your neural circuitry.
Exactly. You must bridge the gap with physical articulation.
But let's go back to the high-stakes scenario. What if I'm on a stage giving a presentation? Or I'm in the middle of a crucial job interview. I can't exactly whip out my smartphone, open a dictionary app, and read a word out loud.
Right, that wouldn't look great.
And I can't look at the hiring manager and ask for a first-syllable clue. I need a real-time, on-the-spot survival strategy.
And that brings us to the fascinating divide between how different communicators handle breakdowns. When a language learner loses a word, they generally take one of two paths: a reduction strategy or an achievement strategy.
Okay, let's break those down.
A reduction strategy is rooted in risk avoidance. You hit a mental block, so you give up, you abandon the sentence entirely, or you awkwardly change the subject to something simpler that you know how to say.
Which means the communication ultimately fails, like the point is lost, and you leave the interaction feeling incredibly defeated.
Right. It's a retreat. But an achievement strategy is risk-taking. You commit to finding a way to get your point across, regardless of the missing vocabulary. And the ultimate achievement strategy, the tool that separates fluent communicators from frustrated ones, is circumlocution.
Circumlocution, which literally translates to talking around the word.
Yes.
I always compare this to driving on a highway. You're cruising along, making a great point, and suddenly there's a massive roadblock, the missing word. A reduction strategy is putting the car in reverse, getting off the highway, and just going home.
Right.
But circumlocution is just taking the scenic detour. You describe the object, you define its purpose, or you explain its opposite. You still arrive at your exact destination, you just use different streets to get there.
That is a brilliant way to visualize the mechanics of it. And we deeply need to reframe how we view that detour. Many language learners feel immense shame when they have to describe a word instead of just saying it. They feel it exposes them as an amateur.
Oh, totally.
But the renowned linguist Paul Nation completely flips this script. He defines fluency not as having perfect native-like accuracy, but as having ready access to what you already know.
I love that. Fluency isn't having a million-word dictionary in your head. It's being a master of the vocabulary you actually possess. It's the agility to use what you have. So how do we train ourselves to be better detour drivers? How do we build that agility?
The linguistic research provides several highly actionable techniques. One of the most effective strategies observed in successful language classrooms is the principle: talk like a preschooler, not a high schooler.
Okay, unpack that for me.
When you panic mid-sentence, your instinct is often to try and construct a wildly complex academic sentence to prove you are smart. But that just demands more working memory and spikes your cortisol further.
You're just overloading the system again.
Exactly. Instead, you need to intentionally lower your affective filter, which is your emotional barrier to learning, and drop back down to simple, foundational English phrases.
Right. You strip away the ego. You stop trying to sound like a university professor and just focus on being understood.
Furthermore, you can use structural scaffolding. You shouldn't have to invent a circumlocution completely on the fly while your brain is panicking. You should memorize formulaic sequences so deeply that they become automatic reflexes.
Like what kind of sequences?
Phrases like, it's a device for, it's a place where, it's similar to, or it's the opposite of.
So if I'm in a medical context and I completely blank on the word stethoscope, I don't freeze and stare at the floor for 30 seconds.
Ray, please don't do that.
I just seamlessly plug into my pre-built scaffold. It's a device for listening to a heartbeat.
Exactly.
Communication achieved. The listener knows exactly what I mean, the meeting moves on, and I didn't wire an error state into my brain.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing is, you can actually train this specific neural pathway using games. It doesn't have to feel like studying.
Oh, I love games. What kind of games?
There's a widely used classroom game called Adivina, which means guess in Spanish. You look at a picture and have to describe the object to your partner without ever using its name. Or you can use classic party games like Taboo or 20 Questions.
Okay, let's actually try this right now to show how it feels. I'm going to think of a word, and I have to get you to guess it without using the word itself or my native language. Ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. It's a type of vehicle. It is large. It flies in the sky. but it does not have wings. It has a giant blade on top that spins in a circle.
A helicopter.
Exactly. See, that took maybe 5 seconds. My brain was actively categorizing the word by its semantic features, like its category, its function, its visual appearance, rather than just panicking over the missing phonetic sound. It's literally a workout for the lemma.
And that is a vital point. Becoming highly skilled at circumlocution isn't just a survival tactic or a cute party trick for language learners. It is quite literally what the world's most effective communicators do when they need to explain vastly complex topics to the general public.
Okay, so circumlocution is the goal. But how do we actually do it without sounding lost or rambling? Like, who are the absolute best in the world at talking around complex words?
That is a great question.
Which brings us to a fascinating breakdown from VidPros regarding YouTube explainer channels. Because when you lose a word and have to talk around it, you essentially have to become an on-the-spot documentary host for the concept in your head.
It's a perfect parallel. If you look at the most successful educational YouTube channels, places like Veritasium, Kurzgesagt, TED-Ed, Vox, or Mark Rober, their entire superpower, the reason they have millions of subscribers, is strategic circumlocution.
Interesting.
They take incredibly dense, jargon-heavy science, astrophysics, or geopolitical concepts, and they explain them using accessible vocabulary and crystal-clear metaphors. English learners can absolutely steal their exact structural formula for handling mid-sentence blanks.
Let's break that explainer formula down because it is so practical for everyday conversation. Step 1. Pay the clarity tax up front.
Yes.
The best explainer channels never teleport you into the middle of complex jargon without a map. If you forget a complicated word in a meeting, don't just start throwing out random adjectives hoping the listener figures it out. Start with the most basic foundational category.
Ground them first.
If you forget the word wrench, your very first sentence should be, it's a type of tool. It immediately orients your listener to the correct file cabinet in their own brain.
Step 2 is to keep a clear structure. You move step by step. You provide the setup, the functional explanation, and then the payoff.
Nice and organized.
And step 3, which is perhaps the most important, use friendly language. As we noted with the preschooler principle, the best channels use short sentences and simple everyday words to explain deep, complex science. You can use simple English to explain your missing word. You do not need a massive vocabulary to express a massive idea.
And step 4, embrace visual metaphors. If you can't find the exact noun, just vividly describe what it looks like. If your brain completely locks you out of the word banana, you don't panic. You just say, it looks like a long yellow fruit that monkeys eat.
Right.
The listener will happily hand you the word banana immediately, and the conversation flows without a single awkward pause.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, using circumlocution does not make you look like you were bad at English. When you use simple language, a clear structure, and vivid visual metaphors to bridge a linguistic gap, it actually makes you sound like a highly effective, deeply engaging storyteller.
You sound like you're teaching them something.
Exactly. You are doing exactly what Mark Rober or a TED speaker does on a global stage. You are prioritizing the listener's understanding over showing off your own vocabulary.
So what does this all mean? If you're the learner out there, whether you are actively trying to master English or you're just trying to survive your next high-stakes quarterly presentation without freezing up, here is your ultimate toolkit. Number 1, don't panic. It's not a failure of intelligence. It's just lethologica.
Guess biology.
Your HPA axis perceives a threat, your cortisol spikes, and your prefrontal cortex just needs a second to reboot.
Number 2, stop struggling. Remember the error reinforcement paradox from Corinne Humphreys. If you sit in silence and agonize over the missing word for 30 seconds, you are biologically wiring a pothole into your neural circuitry. You are practicing the mistake.
Number 3, if you're practicing or studying in a low-stakes environment, break the loop by asking a friend for a first-letter clue. And crucially, make sure you say the word out loud yourself to physically repair the neural pathway.
Have to say it out loud.
And number 4, when you're out in the wild, in a high-stakes meeting, and a word vanishes, take the scenic detour. Use circumlocution, lower your language to the basics, use structural scaffolds, and explain it like you're narrating a $1 million YouTube documentary.
It completely shifts the paradigm of language learning. A missing word is no longer a failure or a source of panic. It's just an opportunity to flex your strategic fluency. But before we wrap up today, this research on neural plasticity raises an important philosophical question that goes far beyond just language learning.
I love a good philosophical curveball. Let's hear it.
We learned today that our brains learn from our errors so rapidly and so efficiently that just struggling in silence for 30 seconds can wire a mistake deep into our memory as incorrect practice.
Right, which is crazy.
It really is. So if our neurobiology is truly that sensitive, what other communicative struggles, interpersonal conflicts, or daily bad habits are we accidentally practicing into permanence simply because we stubbornly refuse to ask for a little bit of help or a simple clue?
Wow, that is deeply unsettling, but an absolutely brilliant point to chew on. Sometimes the hardest thing to do, whether it's in a Spanish class, a boardroom, or a relationship, is just to admit you're stuck and ask for the first letter.
Exactly.
Well, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take these tools, build those mental scaffolds, and the next time a word vanishes from your mental toolbox, don't panic. Just build a detour. See you next time.